Well, I think I finally got this straight, but now we can't see the document now that it's being read by a robo-reader that you can actually stand to listen to. The Megiddo Project is showing you the fact that the FBI has been completely controlled by Israeli agencies. This one solely relies on the FPLC, pointing out that black Israelites, black folks that view themselves as Israelites are terrorists. Pretty much all white people who own a gun are terrorists. Pretty much all white people who don't support Israel and Israeli genocide of children is a white supremacist. Listen and read for yourself. Listen and hear for yourself, and hopefully we can get this thing straightened around right.
When does the new millennium begin? 7 Blueprint for Action. The Turner Diaries. 8 Interpretations of the Bible. 8 Apocalyptic Religious Beliefs. 10 The New World Order Conspiracy Theory in the Year 2000 Computer Bug. 11 Gun Control Laws. 12. 3. Christian Identity. 14. 5e. White Supremacy. 18. B. Militias. 21. VI. Black Hebrew Israelites. 23. 7. Apocalyptic Cults. 26. 8. The Significance of Jerusalem. 30. IX. Conclusion. 32. 3. For over 4,000 years, Megiddo, a hill in northern Israel, has been the site of many battles. Ancient cities were established there to serve as a fortress on the plain of Jezreel to guard a mountain pass. As Megiddo was built and rebuilt, one city upon the other, a mount or hill was formed.
Okay, there it is. So,
3. For over 4,000 years,
sorry, I finally got it right.
The hill in northern Israel has been the site of many battles. Ancient cities were established there to serve as a fortress on the plain of Jezreel to guard a mountain pass. As Megiddo was built and rebuilt, one city upon the other, a mount or hill was formed. The Hebrew word Armageddon means hill of Megiddo. In English, the word has come to represent battle itself. The last book in the New Testament of the Bible designates Armageddon as the assembly point in the apocalyptic setting of God's final and conclusive battle against evil. The name Megiddo is an apt title for a project that analyzes those who believe the year 2000 will usher in the end of the world and who are willing to perpetrate acts of violence to bring that end about. Executive Summary. The year 2000 is being discussed and debated at all levels of society. Most of the discussions regarding this issue revolve around the topic of technology and our society's overwhelming dependence on the multitude of computers and computer chips which make our world run smoothly. However, the upcoming millennium also holds important implications beyond the issue of computer technology. Many extremist individuals and groups place some significance on the next millennium, and as such it will present challenges to law enforcement at many levels. The significance is based primarily upon either religious beliefs relating to the apocalypse or political beliefs relating to the New World Order NWO conspiracy theory. The challenge is how well law enforcement will prepare and respond. The following report, entitled Project Megiddo, is intended to analyze the potential for extremist criminal activity in the United States by individuals or domestic extremist groups who profess an apocalyptic view of the millennium or attach special significance to the year 2000. The purpose behind this assessment is to provide law enforcement agencies with a clear picture of potential extremism motivated by the next millennium. The report does not contain information on domestic terrorist groups whose actions are not influenced by the year 2000. There are numerous difficulties involved in providing a thorough analysis of domestic security threats catalyzed by the new millennium. Quite simply, the very nature of the current domestic terrorism threat places severe limitations on effective intelligence gathering and evaluation. Ideological and philosophical belief systems which attach importance, and possibly violence, to the millennium have been well articulated. From a law enforcement perspective, the problem therefore is not a lack of understanding of motivating ideology. The fundamental problem is that the traditional focal point for counterterrorism analysis, the terrorist group, is not always well defined or relevant in the current environment. The general trend in domestic extremism is the terrorist disavowal of traditional, hierarchical, and structured terrorist organizations. Even well-established militias, which tend to organize along military lines with central control, are characterized by factionalism and disunity. For while several professional terrorist groups still exist and present a continued threat to domestic security, the overwhelming majority of extremist groups in the United States have adopted a fragmented, legalist structure where individuals or small groups act with autonomy. Clearly, the worst act of domestic terrorism in United States history was perpetrated by merely two individuals, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols. In many cases, extremists of this sort are extremely difficult to identify until after an incident has occurred. Thus, analysis of domestic extremism in which a group serves as the focal point of evaluation has obvious limitations. The Project Megiddo Intelligence Initiative has identified very few indications of specific threats to domestic security. Given the present nature of domestic extremism, this is to be expected. However, this is a function of the limitations of the group-oriented model of counterterrorism analysis and should not be taken necessarily as reflective of a minor or trivial domestic threat. Without question, this initiative has revealed indicators of potential violent activity on the part of extremists in this country. Militias, adherents of racist belief systems such as Christian identity and Odinism, and other radical domestic extremists are clearly focusing on the millennium as a time of action. Certain individuals from these various perspectives are acquiring weapons, storing food and clothing, raising funds through fraudulent means, procuring safe houses, preparing compounds, surveying potential targets, and recruiting new converts. These and other indicators are not taking place in a vacuum, nor are they random or arbitrary. In the final analysis, while making specific predictions is extremely difficult, acts of violence in commemoration of the millennium are just as likely to occur as not. In the absence of intelligence that the more established and organized terrorist groups are planning millennial violence as an organizational strategy, violence is most likely to be perpetrated by radical fringe members of established groups. For example, while Aryan Nations leader Richard Butler publicly frowns on proactive violence, adherents of his religion or individual members of his organization may commit acts of violence autonomously. Potential cult-related violence presents additional challenges to law enforcement. The potential for violence on behalf of members of biblically driven cults is determined almost exclusively by the whims of the cult leader. Therefore, effective intelligence and analysis of such cults requires an extensive understanding of the cult leader. Cult members generally act to serve and please the cult leader rather than accomplish an ideological objective. Almost universally, cult leaders are viewed as messianic in the eyes of their followers. Also, the cult leader's prophecies, preaching, orders, and objectives are subject to indiscriminate change. Thus, while analysis of publicly stated goals and objectives of cults may provide hints about their behavior and intentions, it is just as likely to be uninformed or, at worst, misleading. Much more valuable is a thorough examination of the cult leader, his position of power over his followers, and an awareness of the responding behavior and activity of the cult. Sudden changes in activity, for example, less time spent on Bible study and more time spent on physical training, indicate that the cult may be preparing for some type of action. The millennium holds special significance for many, and as this pivotal point in time approaches, the impetus for the initiation of violence becomes more acute. Several religiously won U.S. Congress, Senate, Special Committee on the Year 2000 Technology Problem, investigating the impact of the Year 2000 Problem, February 24, 1996, pp. 16, 2 ibis p. 3, 3 ibis p. 5. 5 motivated groups envision a quick, fiery ending in an apocalyptic battle. Others may initiate a sustained campaign of terrorism in the United States to prevent the NWO. Armed with the urgency of the millennium as a motivating factor, new clandestine groups may conceivably form to engage in violence toward the U.S. government or its citizens. Most importantly, this analysis clearly shows that perceptions matter. The perceptions of the leaders and followers of extremist organizations will contribute much toward the ultimate course of action they choose. For example, in-depth analysis of Y2K compliancy on the part of various key sectors that rely on computers has determined that despite a generally positive outlook for overall compliance, there will be problem industries and minor difficulties and inconveniences. 1. If they occur, these inconveniences are likely to cause varying responses by the extreme fringes. Members of various militia groups, for example, have identified potentially massive power failures as an indication of a United Nations-directed NWO takeover. While experts have indicated that only minor brownouts will occur, various militias are likely to perceive such minor brownouts as indicative of a larger conspiracy. The Senate Special Committee on the Year 2000 Technology Problem has stated that some state and local governments could be unprepared, including the inability to provide benefits payments. 3. This could have a significant impact in major urban areas, resulting in the possibility for civil unrest. Violent white supremacists are likely to view such unrest as an affirmation of a racist, hate-filled worldview. Likewise, militia members who predict the implementation of martial law in response to a Y2K computer failure would become all the more fearful. 4. Cliff Leindecker, Prophecies for the New Millennium, Lantana, FL, Micromag, 1999, p. 3462. Introduction. Are we already living on the precipice of the apocalypse, the chaotic final period of warfare between the forces of good and evil, signaling the second coming of Christ, as forecast in the New Testament-esque book of Revelation? Or will life on earth continue for another 1,000 years, allow humans to eliminate disease and solve the mysteries of the aging process so they can live as long as Methuselah, colonize space, commune with extraterrestrials, unravel the secrets of teleportation, and usher in a golden age of peace and productivity? For at first glance, some of the predictions compiled in Prophecies for the New Millennium that claim to foretell how the millennium will affect the United States seem benign. In fact, those predictions capture some of the countless ways that domestic terrorists view how the millennium will affect the world. The threat posed by extremists as a result of perceived events associated with the year 2000 Y2K is very real. Numerous religious extremists claim that a race war will soon begin, and have taken steps to become martyrs in their predicted battle between good and evil. 3 recent incidents committed by suspects who adhere to ideologies that emphasize millennial-related violence illustrate those beliefs. Bufado Farrow Jr., the man charged in the August 1999 shootings at a Los Angeles area Jewish daycare center, told authorities it's time for America to wake and kill the Jews. Ben Smith, who committed suicide after shooting at minorities in Indiana and Illinois, killing 2 and injuring 10, over the July 4, 1999 weekend, was found to have literature in his home that indicated the year 2000 would be the start of the killing of minorities. And John William King, the man convicted in the dragging death of James Byrd Jr., a black man in Jasper, Texas, believed that his actions would help to initiate a race war. Each of these men believed in the imminence of a racial holy war. Meanwhile, for members of the militia movement, the new millennium has a political overtone rather than a religious one. It is their belief that the United Nations has created a secret plan, known as the New World Order NWO, to conquer the world beginning in 2000. The NWO will be set in motion by the Y2K computer crisis. Religious motivation and the NWO conspiracy theory are the 2 driving forces behind the potential for millennial violence. As the end of the millennium draws near, biblical prophecy and political philosophy may merge into acts of violence by the more extreme members of domestic terrorist groups that are motivated, in part, by religion. The volatile mix of apocalyptic religions and NWO conspiracy theories may produce violent acts aimed at precipitating the end of the world as prophesied in the Bible. When and how Christ's second coming will occur is a critical point in the ideology of those motivated by extremist religious beliefs about the millennium. There is no consensus within 7 Christianity regarding the specific date that the apocalypse will occur. However, within many right-wing religious groups there is a uniform belief that the apocalypse is approaching. Some of these same groups also point to a variety of non-religious indicators such as gun control, the Y2K computer problem, the NWO, the banking system, and a host of other signs that the apocalypse is near. Almost uniformly, the belief among right